this is Anshu. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So my first video, I'm a little nervous but extremely excited to be able to answer all of your questions. So on Instagram, a few days ago, I asked you guys if you had any questions about my book, the cover which I recently released. And so I picked some of my favorite questions. So I hope you guys will like the video, and if you have more questions, you can always comment them down below. So let's just start answering all of your questions. So basically, it's not like a novel or one piece of writing. There's so many different small write-ups and poetries. So basically the theme is reminiscence. I think I reflected in all of my experiences, my fears, my desires. And so there's an element of me in the entire book. So it's always like something that I'm talking about, but in a more fictional area. So I added different elements and characters to make it more interesting for the people. But I feel like I've gotten inspired from my experiences, and the theme is basically about reminiscence, fears, desires, love, and all of that. Because there's so many poetry, so there's always that. But one binding element in all of the poems, I think it's about me. Alternative titles. Of course, I've thought about The Knives That Tore Me, Bittersweet Reminiscence, Consumed by Reminiscence, In the Middle of a Dark Ocean. I don't know, dark ocean is a phrase I really liked, so I always wanted to put it somewhere. But then I thought, the flame in my heart was more about getting up from those bad times. The other things sounded more like, I was still in those bad times, but I felt like the flame in my heart kind of made the bad times feel like as if I'm moving forward, getting out of them. So I've chose The Flame in My Heart as the final title. So the flame in my heart means, so basically I'm an extremely non-expressive person. I do not talk about my issues to anybody, so I felt like the flame that resides in my heart was something like a burning spirit inside of me, a spirit that refused to come out of my soul. And through this book, I wanted to be able to tell my audience about that flame, about that experience, about that spirit inside me, which I'm now letting out to the world. So I think it's an essential, like a part of me without which I would be incomplete. So I would be letting out that part, that information about me, that flame about me, the flame in my heart to the world. And I thought that title was very apt and very convincing. So that's why I chose that title. So I'm an avid reader. I read all kinds of books, but one book that left a lasting impression on me is The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. So when I read that book, it's almost like a lot of emotional experiences, life experiences of her when she was in the Holocaust camp, and I felt like there was a very clear narrative that helped the reader feel like they were at that situation at the present. So it was almost like writing was helping her as a form of expression. So that really stuck into my head. So when I was writing Flame in the Heart, I've always felt like I have to express myself. So most of this book is kind of derived from my experiences, from my traumas, from my anxieties, from my fears, from my good times and bad times, from my love, from my happiness, from everything that's about me. But I would say in a more creative way. I haven't narrated it, but I've written poetry about it, written experiences about it. If I can exactly remember, there's a write-up about winter in the book. I felt like I had one experience of winter which was so long-lasting on my childhood, which really helped me shape some of the characteristics that I have today. So I felt like I had to write about winter because the love for coffee, for sweaters, and some things have stemmed from there. So I've talked about it. So I felt like, inspired by that book. I've always wanted to include an element of me in my book, because whenever a person reads the book, they should feel some sense of author, some sense of what she wants to say. So when I started writing in general, I was very young, I think about 7 years, I would say. Then later, when I started writing this particular book, I was 17 and it was lockdown. So even though I had written a book earlier, it wasn't entirely my work, but I had a lot of experience from producing that book. So when I started writing this book, the only aim, the only interest was to express myself, because I was not a very outspoken child when I was 12, 13 years old, and I felt like there were a lot of things in my life that I was experiencing that remained unsaid. I never wanted anything to be unsaid. I wanted to say it out. I wanted to be able to express who I really was and not hide behind a mask. So I felt like writing was that creative form of expression for me. So the only aim that I started writing was to produce a work, to produce a writing that really spoke true to who I am. So that was the aim. There was no sort of monetary interest, not at that time, nor today. I felt like writing is something that gives me joy, is something that really speaks to me, is something that helps me tell the world who I am, helps me connect with people. So that was the only intention of writing this book. I wouldn't say I would take it as a full-time job, because I feel like once you start adding that full-time job tag or monetary interest tag to it, it kind of becomes like you have to do it. When you really love someone or something, you don't have to feel like you need to do it. I just, from the bottom of my heart, I wanted to feel like I want to write when I want to write, because it comes naturally to me. I cannot set aside a day and say I want to write at this particular day, because, it comes naturally. Whenever I want to write something or a poem, I immediately type it down on my phone. And it comes to me at the most random of times, like when I'm looking at the moonlight, when I'm looking at the beach, when I'm listening to the sound of the ocean. So I think random scenes click into my head and remind me of certain experiences in my life, whether good or bad. So I feel like writing is not something that I want to take at a professional level. It's just my creative hobby that I would like to keep it just like that. It took me very limited amount of time. I think I would say I completed it in 1 month, and again I was editing it for the next month and like compiling it and producing it into the book format. So I would say 1 to 2 months was the time I took, because I felt like it was lockdown, so I had a lot of time on my hand, and for me, it doesn't really take a lot of time to think about the words or think about what I want to write. I think it flows naturally. So once I see something and I'm inspired by it, I go down and I note down what inspired me, and then I start writing. So it comes out more naturally, and it takes very less time for me. So I think 1 to 2 months was the time I took to write the book. I hope that answered your question. Like I've said this whole video, I feel like I haven't narrated what exactly happened to me, but I took what happened to me and took out an element of me into the poems, and put those characteristics to the main characters in the poem, or to the narrator in the poem, in the write-ups. I felt like I took that information, I took that idea as an inspiration, and converted that into a more fictional kind of theme. Took that to my characters, and I felt like that was the theme. So obviously it is about my life and my life experiences, but I would just say the inspiration was converted into something more fictional. So the conversion is where all of that writing creativity came into. So I've recently started writing poetry, like in the lockdown. So although this book has a lot of poetry, but I would say the one genre that I can say is I like writing fiction, drama, and comedy, because in drama I feel like you can kind of create this entire world. You can do that in any genre, but I felt like drama was more like relatable. You can make drama a little more relatable, so when the audience or the readers are reading, they kind of imagine themselves, they kind of feel a sense of themselves in that work as well when they're reading. So I would say fiction, drama, and comedy is something I like to write in. Such an important question. I feel like I can talk hours about it. What emotional experience I had. So as someone who suffers from severe anxiety, I'm always constantly worried about everything and anything. So I felt like And also, as a child, I was very bullied. So when I was bullied, I used to write notes back in school about how I felt. And in my entire life, I always felt like I was different, and I was kind of picked on for that. So I had a lot of that into my head. And when I was writing, I basically went to the beach the other day, and I heard the sound of the ocean, and I closed my eyes, and this was the first incident that popped into my head. Me walking through a staircase, and people were laughing at me. And I immediately came back home, and I recorded a poem. I was writing down a poem about that incident, about how that shaped me. And then I felt like when you write, that words echo in your ear, and it like kind of vividly, there's a vivid image in your head, and you kind of have a deja vu of when that happened. So you have a clear idea of how that happened. And so I began crying because I felt like it kind of gave me a mental recollection of that incident, of where I felt like I was an outcast. So that was one of the experiences, I think, that was so stuck vividly in my head that I was able to tell you. So I hope I answered all of your questions. I hope you liked the video. It was my first video, and it was such a surreal experience shooting for it, because I never ever was so comfortable speaking in front of the camera. But yeah, if you liked the video, like, share, subscribe, and comment down below if you have any video suggestions. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.